In this video, you'll relive the moment the USS John Finn was surrounded by two Chinese destroyers during a lawful mission in the South China Sea, and the inside view from the Combat Information Center as it happened. We'll break down radar data, bridge communications, and the exact tactical choices that diffused a confrontation without a single round fired. You'll see why the Navy calls situations like this calculated calm, and how a few restrained moves prevented an international crisis. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. The first hint of trouble came as two faint blips on radar bearings 301 and 328. At first they looked routine, passing contacts common in the South China Sea. The USS John Finn was on a scheduled freedom of navigation transit, holding a steady course through open waters. Winds were light, visibility good, and the crew was settled into the rhythm of a standard watch. On the bridge, the hum of electronics mixed with the low chatter between officers scanning screens and verifying bearings. Nothing looked out of place until those radar returns began to change speed. Within minutes, the Combat Information Center flagged a shift. Both contacts were accelerating beyond normal patrol speeds, closing in fast. As the data updated, the numbers told their own story. Two surface contacts now traveling at 27 knots, hull numbers 172 and 175, matched the profiles of Chinese Type 052D destroyers. They weren't following or shadowing, they were moving directly toward the John Finn. The CIC's calm air of routine shifted instantly. Sailors switched from navigation monitoring to tactical readiness drills. The lighting dimmed to red inside the control space, screens filled with bearing lines, speed vectors, and range data. The gap between the ships tightened, 24 nautical miles, then 20, then 16. Every few seconds, another update signaled the rate of closure, half a mile per minute. A collision vector was forming. The John Finn's crew reacted by the book. The operations officer called for sensor fusion, tying radar data with inputs from the SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite. The system began passing emissions, breaking down each radar pulse from the approaching vessels. It confirmed active surface radar, likely a Type 364, sweeping X-band frequencies, but notably, no fire control signal. That detail mattered. They were scanning, not targeting. Yet the pattern showed more than routine surveillance. Every adjustment from the Chinese ships mirrored the John Finn's motion. This was no random encounter. It was an intercept. From the bridge, officers tracked bearing drifts and closing rates, comparing real-time plots against navigation charts. The commanding officer ordered a steady course. Communication staff issued bilingual hails on maritime frequencies. No reply came back. The silence was its own message. Sailors reported visual haze on the horizon, where the returns should be. The tension in the room wasn't about shouting or panic, it was focus. Each person knew their role. Each system was on standby. You could sense that the calm wasn't comfort. It was training, holding firm under pressure. Inside the CIC, the discussion turned to intent. Reflections from radar, speed jumps, bearing stability, all indicators of deliberate positioning. The destroyer's long wakes revealed sustained acceleration, and the closest point of approach was projected under 3 nautical miles if neither side turned. The question hung silent through the bridge: hold course and risk collision, or deviate and risk signaling retreat. Doctrine was clear: maintain posture unless there's physical danger. The captain's direction echoed that guidance: stay steady, monitor everything, let them show intent. Every few seconds, sailors called out updated range: 12 nautical miles, then 11. Two faint grey silhouettes appeared on the edge of visibility. That was the moment awareness hardened into recognition. The crew no longer debated whether this was provocation. They knew it was. The ship's movements were too sharp, too synchronized, their silence deliberate. This wasn't about proximity, it was about testing limits. On the John Finn, professionalism became the shield. Every motion, every transmission, every turn of the optical director was done by procedure, logged, recorded. There was no bluffing, no guessing. The encounter shifted from a radar equation to a psychological duel between navigators and nations. As the range dropped to 10 nautical miles and the destroyer's decks came into view, the test finally stepped out of the screens and into the open sea. At 5 nautical miles, both destroyers held their line, their hulls gleaming under overcast light. The USS John Finn remained dead on course, matching their position through precise helm adjustments that kept her formation steady. No turn, no deviation. The captain had already given his order: maintain posture, no course deviation, let them show intent. The deck watch stood firm, their movements controlled and deliberate. The John Finn's 5-inch Mark 45 gun mount rotated slowly, not to target, but to signal awareness. Its motion was deliberate enough for the Chinese crews to see. The ship's .50 caliber mounts were manned, safety secured, ready, but not provocative. It was a visible statement of alert status without crossing the line toward aggression. The next few minutes unfolded like a chess match. A transmission broke through on maritime frequency, an assertion of Chinese jurisdiction over nearby waters, routine in tone, but sharpened by the proximity of armed destroyers. The John Finn's communications officer responded with a standard acknowledgement reaffirming innocence of passage under international law. Inside the Combat Information Center, defensive protocols moved to the next level. The SLQ-32 suite captured every radar pulse, recording emissions to map the exact operating modes of the approaching ships. Surface radar tracked each bearing drift down to fractional degrees. The CIC authorized the launch of the ship's MH-60R Seahawk helicopter, configured for visible surveillance. Its rotors cut through the air moments later, rising into the grey sky and taking up a tight orbit overhead, cameras running continuously. Every rotation of that helicopter was a message. The John Finn was watching, documenting, and fully prepared. The Seahawk's infrared sensors fed a live stream back to the ship, where analysts logged hull numbers, deck activity, and antenna movements from both destroyers. The aircrew transmitted calm status reports, their tone clipped and professional. Down below, sailors focused on recording rather than reacting. The bridge camera turned toward the nearest vessel, its image magnified to show weapon mounts, crew figures, and deck angle. Even subtle actions, slight changes in formation, or the flicker of a search radar were annotated for post-incident documentation. This wasn't just caution, it was preservation of evidence. Every byte of data proved adherence to international norms. The Chinese destroyers maneuvered close, their wakes spreading outward. One crossed slightly ahead, narrowing the separation to under 4 miles, an unsafe distance at that speed. Still, the John Finn held steady, abiding by the rules of engagement. Maintain ROE Phase 1 passive observation only. That directive anchored every decision. The officers on watch knew that responding too quickly could be taken as instability. Responding too meekly could invite risk. The focus was discipline, measured, visible, and entirely legal. Such encounters rely as much on perception as on capability. Deterrence in these moments isn't about who has more firepower, it's about who stays composed when provoked. When the 5-inch gun came to rest, its silhouette lined cleanly with the horizon. Every observer on deck understood the intent. This was signaling through posture, power balanced with restraint. The Seahawk's orbit widened slightly. Time-stamped recordings still streaming back to the CIC. Down in electronic warfare, operators continued logging radar sweeps to build what analysts later called an electronic order of battle. Every radar tone, every emission, every bearing was preserved for the intelligence brief that would follow. Gradually, the atmosphere shifted. The Chinese ship slowed to 20 knots. Their distance widened to 6 miles, then 8. Faint pings from their radars softened as they adjusted to a parallel heading. The electronic buzz that had filled the CIC began to thin. The John Finn's crew did not relax, but they recognized what that silence meant. The confrontation had met its end. No yield, no collision, no shots fired. The calm had worked. Back on the bridge, the operations team synced final position readings and logged the exchange for fleet command. Presence was the weapon, patience the armor. The USS John Finn's 15-minute encounter showed that calm resolve can project as much force as missiles or guns. In contested waters, it proved that the sharpest edge of deterrence is control. These brief, silent tests now define the boundaries of modern naval competition. Every steady course, every measured reply, shapes doctrine that guides fleets worldwide. Future skippers will study moments like this, not as near collisions, but as lessons in power through restraint. Preparation and discipline remain the true markers of strength in a sea watched by both allies and rivals.